Red Bull just revealed something so advanced rival teams might not be able to copy it all season. Days before the Australian Grand Prix, they confirmed a fully integrated Ford-powered RB22 upgrade package, and the numbers are staggering. Over 2,000 laps completed in testing. 0 major mechanical failures. 4 tenths per lap faster than Ferrari in race simulations. 12 degrees cooler engine temperatures. More than 340 kilometers per hour without drag reduction system. And that was before the Melbourne upgrades were unleashed. Deeper blown diffuser evolution. Completely redesigned front wing. Refined Ford hybrid deployment mapping. Stronger traction. Sharper rotation. Up to half a second per lap potentially gained. Half a second. In modern Formula One, that is not an upgrade. That is separation. And here is the part that changes everything. This is not a single innovation. It is a closed-loop system between aerodynamics, cooling, and hybrid deployment. Which means it is not easy to copy. It is not fast to replicate. It requires redesign. If these numbers translate to Melbourne, the Australian Grand Prix might not just start the season. It might expose a gap nobody can close. Subscribe now, because what we are about to break down could explain why the paddock has gone completely silent. Now let's break down why this is so difficult to copy. Because before the Melbourne upgrades were even added, the foundation already looked elite. In Bahrain testing, Red Bull completed over 2,000 laps. That is not just preparation. That is structural confidence. 0 major mechanical failures. No emergency rebuilds. No visible instability. In the first season of a new regulatory era, that level of reliability gives you something priceless. Freedom. Freedom to push development early. Freedom to experiment within a stable window. Freedom to hide performance. And that is exactly what Red Bull appeared to do. They did not chase headline qualifying laps. They focused on long runs. Heavy fuel simulations. Controlled engine maps. Telemetry suggested Verstappen was running conservative power settings while still producing purple mini-sectors in the technical middle section. Conservative. Which means there was more available. Possibly much more. But the real warning sign for rivals was degradation. Across extended race simulations, the RB22 showed almost flat tire drop-off. Lap after lap. Minimal fall away. That changes strategy completely. Because when your tires remain stable, you dictate the pace. You stretch stints. You pressure rivals into early pit stops. You control track position. And Melbourne is a circuit where clean air can decide everything. Now layer in the Ford factor. Engine temperatures reportedly ran 12 degrees cooler than competitors. That is not just efficiency. That is thermal headroom. Headroom means sustained hybrid deployment. No clipping late on the straight. No sudden drop in electrical boost when defending or attacking. In testing, the RB22 reached over 340 kilometers per hour without drag reduction system. That is not accidental. That is integration between cooling, packaging, and aerodynamic philosophy. And here is where it becomes nearly impossible to copy. Because this advantage is not coming from one radical wing element. It is coming from how the engine, cooling system, and rear aero work together as a unit. To replicate that, a rival team would not need one new part. They would need a redesign. And redesign takes time. Time they do not have before the lights go out in Australia. We are days away from the first Grand Prix of the season. And if this was Red Bull holding something back in testing, what happens when they unleash the full system in Melbourne? Now we move to Melbourne. Because this is where the advantage stops being theoretical. Red Bull has confirmed an aggressive evolution package for the Australian Grand Prix, internally referred to as Spec 1.1. And this is not a single part upgrade. It is a coordinated system refinement. Let us begin at the rear. The side pods have evolved again, featuring a deeper undercut and more aggressive airflow direction toward the diffuser. But here is what makes this so powerful. The hot air from the Ford power unit is not simply expelled. It is redirected to energize the diffuser. That increases rear downforce without increasing drag. More grip through medium speed corners. No sacrifice on the straight. That kind of thermal aero synergy cannot be copied overnight. Because it depends on engine packaging, cooling layout, and aerodynamic philosophy being aligned from the very beginning. Then comes the front wing revision. A completely new mainplane geometry. Sharper response in slow corners. More precise rotation. This directly addresses Verstappen's feedback about balance in tight sections. Under the new generation cars, front-end precision defines everything. If the nose reacts instantly, tire slip reduces. If tire slip reduces, surface temperatures stay controlled. If temperatures stay controlled, race pace remains stable. Now connect that to the diffuser and rear crash structure extension. Improved airflow expansion on exit. More traction. Earlier throttle application. An earlier throttle pairs perfectly with the refined Ford Stage 2 engine mapping. Reduced turbo lag. Cleaner torque delivery. No clipping at the end of long straights. Stack all of these gains together, and the projected improvement approaches half a second per lap. Half a second. Before the first race of the season. But here is the key reason this is so difficult to replicate. It is not just performance. It is correlation. Red Bull has validated its wind tunnel data against real track performance. That means what they design in the factory behaves the same way on asphalt. When correlation is strong, development accelerates. Upgrades arrive faster. Confidence increases. Meanwhile, rivals must question their data if performance does not match expectations. That slows them down. Now imagine Sunday in Melbourne. Verstappen launches cleanly. The revised front wing gives him precise rotation into turn 1. The rear remains planted through the flowing middle sector. The Ford power unit deploys smoothly without thermal stress. Lap after lap, the RB22 maintains balance. No overheating spikes. No sudden drop in deployment. Just steady, controlled pace. And that is what makes it nearly impossible to copy. Because you cannot copy confidence. You cannot copy validated integration. You cannot redesign your cooling architecture in a week. We are days away from lights out. If the RB22 performs exactly as revealed, Australia will not simply start the season. It will expose a gap built on philosophy, not just parts. And philosophy is the hardest thing to reverse once the championship is already underway. Now here is the part nobody wants to admit out loud. If Red Bull has truly aligned cooling, aerodynamics, hybrid deployment, and driver adaptation this early, the advantage compounds. Because Formula One development is exponential, not linear. When your base concept works, every update adds performance. When your base concept is flawed, every update is a correction. Red Bull does not look like they are correcting. They look like they are refining. Think about the timing. This is the first Grand Prix of the season. Most teams are still discovering weaknesses in race conditions. Brake temperatures under traffic. Energy deployment under sustained pressure. Tire behavior in dirty air. If Red Bull leaves Melbourne with confirmation that the RB22 remains stable across all those variables, their development direction becomes clear. They double down. They sharpen the concept. They widen the window. And that is when gaps start to grow. Now bring Verstappen back into the equation. The 2026 generation demands discipline. You cannot overdrive these cars. You must manage deployment phases. You must control throttle application. You must protect the rear tires on exit. Verstappen has evolved into a driver who understands rhythm. He builds races. He does not chase them. If the revised front wing gives him sharper entry confidence, and the diffuser refinement gives him earlier traction, he can place the car exactly where he wants it. Not aggressively. Precisely. And precision is devastating over a full race distance. Imagine the final stint in Melbourne. Fuel loads lighter. Tires approaching their limit. Rivals pushing to close the gap. If the Ford cooling advantage prevents clipping, if deployment remains stable, if the rear stays planted through the fast transitions, Verstappen can respond instantly. Not with desperation. With control. That is what makes this impossible to copy in the short term. Because you are not copying a wing. You are trying to replicate a closed system built around thermal efficiency, aero balance, and a driver perfectly synchronized with both. And synchronization takes time. Time rivals do not have between race 1 and race 2. We are days away from lights out in Australia. The grid will line up believing the season is wide open. Believing that development will reshape the hierarchy. But if the RB22 performs exactly as Red Bull has revealed, Melbourne will not simply show who is quickest. It will reveal who built something structurally superior from the very beginning. And the uncomfortable truth is this. Once a team proves its philosophy works in a new era, the hardest thing to copy is not the parts. It is the understanding behind them. So as the lights prepare to go out at Albert Park, the real question is no longer whether Red Bull improved. It is whether anyone else can redesign their own philosophy quickly enough to stop what might already be unfolding. And now we reach the final layer of this story. Because if Australia confirms what Red Bull has revealed, the impact will stretch far beyond one race weekend. It will shape the entire direction of the season. Here is why. When a team begins a new regulatory era with reliability, pace, thermal control, and aerodynamic stability already aligned, the development curve becomes aggressive. Not reactive. Aggressive. They are not spending the first races fixing weaknesses. They are enhancing strengths. That is how dominance begins quietly. Think about what happens after Melbourne if the RB22 delivers the projected half-second advantage. Confidence inside the factory surges. Engineers trust the data. Correlation between simulation and track is validated. Upgrades that are already in the pipeline move forward without hesitation. There is no second guessing. No internal panic. Just momentum. Meanwhile, rivals begin asking uncomfortable questions. Is the cooling architecture limiting deployment? Is the aero concept too drag-heavy? Is the hybrid strategy too conservative? Those questions slow development. And hesitation in Formula One is costly. Now imagine the championship narrative if Verstappen wins in Australia with control. Not chaos. Not luck. Control. Sharp rotation on entry thanks to the revised front wing. Stable rear grip through the middle sector from the diffuser evolution. Early throttle application supported by the improved rear airflow expansion. Smooth, uninterrupted hybrid deployment from the refined Ford mapping. Lap after lap, the car remains in its window. That kind of performance does something psychological. It tells the grid that the philosophy works. And philosophy is the hardest thing to change mid-season. You can add a wing. You can tweak suspension. You cannot redesign your entire cooling and aerodynamic integration in weeks. That takes months. And championships are often shaped in those months. We are days away from the first lights out of the year. The anticipation is building. Every team believes there is still room to fight. But if the RB22 performs exactly as Red Bull has revealed, Australia may deliver a message that echoes through the entire paddock. Not that Red Bull is unbeatable, but that they understood the new generation faster, integrated better, prepared deeper, and aligned their driver perfectly with the platform. When that happens this early, the gap is not just on the stopwatch. It is in understanding. And understanding, once proven correct, becomes incredibly difficult to chase. So as the engines fire up in Melbourne, the real question will not simply be who wins the first Grand Prix. It will be whether the rest of Formula One just realized they are chasing a concept that was built to be impossible to copy in the time that matters most.